Hi, my name's Kelsey,
And my name is Mary.
and we chose to do our project on the shortage of baby formula due to the pandemic.
Ever since the start of the coronavirus pandemic in 2020, supply chains all around the world have been disrupted. Businesses were shut down, forcing manufacturers to stop the production of certain goods. A limited number of people available to work caused companies to fall behind their usual pace. Then, when things started to open, a scarce number of raw materials influenced people to go into a panic. Not only were manufacturers struggling to meet demand, but consumers continued to stock up on goods in fear of what would come. This left store shelves bare and significantly increased shipping times. Together, these issues affected all types of items and caused shortages on goods from building materials to baby formula, the product we will be discussing today. The United States is currently experiencing a nationwide shortage of baby formula. Parents throughout the country are having a difficult time finding formula to feed their babies. The shortage has occurred since the start of the pandemic, but a recent recall has escalated the situation. Everyone is pointing fingers at each other for the failure to meet demand, but it is the result of multiple factors. Davey, the client engagement president for the research firm IRI, states, "Some of the shortages are related to procuring the raw materials, some of it in production, some of it is packaging, and then labor shortages in the factory, transportation." To really understand the situation, we will be looking at each factor individually. One cause of the formula shortage is that there is a scarcity of certain ingredients. Manufacturers are unable to locate some of the raw materials that go into the product. With many companies importing goods from other countries, accumulating enough materials to mass produce its normal quantity has been challenging. This supply shortage has ultimately resulted in less formula being created in 2021. Another reason for the limited supply is the demand for labor. Since the pandemic started, there has been a huge increase in demand for employees, specifically in retail. After manufacturers produce the baby formula, it takes a while for the product to go from the warehouse to store shelves. First off, there are not enough truck drivers to fulfill transportation needs. Companies need to wait a little longer for their items to be shipped. Second, stores are low on associates who restock the shelves. While a store may have the product in inventory, it takes extra time for it to reach consumers. Furthermore, baby formula companies look at the expected birth rate to determine what their demand will be for the given year. With the pandemic and supply shortages, demand increased. Worried parents stocked up on formula, creating an unforeseen spike in demand. Reckitt, a maker for Enfamil, one of the two most popular formula brands, told CBS News, U.S. baby formula industry-wide sales are up 18%, which is more than double birth rates. The large manufacturers were not prepared to meet such a need and are now trying to work overtime to solve the issue. While things were starting to get under control, a recall set the process back. Abbott, a producer of one of the most popular formulas, Similac, issued a recall due to a bacteria found in their product. This led to currently available formulas being removed from shelves, only making the shortage worse. Before the pandemic, out-of-stock levels of baby formula was around 5%. This number is typically not of great concern. However, combining all these factors together in the past year, that has drastically changed. According to an analysis by the Consumer Product Data from Data Assembly, out-of-stock levels of baby formula quickly shot up 25% in February from 11% in December. This graph allows you to visually understand just how much the out-of-stock percentage spiked. It has gradually been increasing since last year, but the recall made the situation much worse. The out-of-stock percentage continues to increase with no end in sight. Since formula may be the only way for a baby to receive nutrition, this is an issue that needs to be solved quickly. While the pandemic has created a unique situation for us all, locating and understanding the primary cause of this shortage is essential. One concept we learned in lecture was variability due to disruptions. Since supply chains have many layers to them, they can be easily affected by natural disasters and economic changes. The COVID-19 pandemic affected the entire world and brought multiple disruptions to the supply chain. Manufacturers had a difficult time finding raw materials, and retailers struggled to find labor for transportation. Furthermore, the pandemic also issued uncertain demand. Worried about the future, many parents stocked up on formula, causing an unforeseen spike in demand. Manufacturers normally analyze the annual birth rate, so this was something they were not prepared for. Together, the pandemic serves as an example that unexpected factors can arise, causing the management of operations to shift significantly. Now I'll pass it off to Kelsey.
Another concept we learned was the bullwhip effect. The bullwhip effect is a supply chain phenomenon that describes how fluctuations in demand at the retail level can create even larger disruptions in demand at the wholesale, distributor, and manufacturer level. Some situations that may impact the bullwhip effect include lead time issues such as manufacturing delays, over or under reacting to demand expectations, and inaccurate forecasts by relying too heavily on historical demand to predict future demand. Baby formula is experiencing this issue as many customers stocked up on baby formula due to the pandemic, causing a large supply shortage. Suppliers and retailers were unprepared for the spike in demand based on relying too heavily on historical demand. This graph on the right allows us to visualize how fluctuations in demand can cause a rippling effect to the distributor, retailer, and manufacturer. This shows how important it is to best forecast demand to avoid the bullwhip effect. But sometimes it's out of the business's control when unpredictable disruptions arise, like COVID-19. With the knowledge learned in this course, our team has identified solutions to counteract and adjust the process efficiency when companies are failing to meet demand due to the disruptions of the pandemic. One way to help alleviate the shortage of meeting demand is by offloading the bottleneck. A process is considered efficient by achieving a high flow rate with few resources. If determining whether the issue is a labor shortage, the first measure of labor efficiency is the labor cost associated with producing inventory. After measuring the cost of direct labor to determine the ratio of inputs to outputs, we can compute the labor content to measure how much work is required in serving one flow unit. After this, we compute the average labor utilization to measure the efficiency of the employees. We want the labor utilization to be as high as possible. So if it is low, we know that we have some unutilized workers that are creating a less efficient process. Once we determine whether labor is efficient or not, a company must adjust their staffing level to meet their demand. To match supply with demand, a company must start by taking the current demand rate and staff the appropriate number of resources to meet the demand. We would use the unit of time divided by the required quantity to calculate the takt time. The labor content and takt time allows us to calculate the target manpower, which determines the minimum number of resources required to meet demand. Because of the significantly increasing high demand rate for baby formula, the takt time must be shorter, which means a manufacturing company requires more employees to perform at the same amount of work. After a company has leveled the demand and located the bottleneck, one must then balance the process. This can be done by reassigning activities to other resources with more capacity. Some ways to achieve this are by outsourcing some of the activities, hiring more employees, or having your employees work overtime to meet demand. In this scenario, since the bottleneck may be that manufacturers do not have enough time to produce, they are running their production facilities at full capacity 24/7 to try to meet current demand. The makers of Similac baby formula from Abbott Nutrition stated that they are running their production facilities at full capacity 24/7 and are manufacturing more than they ever have, according to CNN Business. When dealing with a supply shortage, one way to reduce it is by diversifying your suppliers and having a backup supply base. When retailers are reliant on one supplier, any issues with the supplier can likely disrupt the entire supply chain. In this instance, one of the reasons the baby formula manufacturers are struggling to find raw materials is because they use international distributors. If they diversify their supply base and use more than one supplier, they are able to spread and reduce risk impact. Engaging with multiple suppliers, including those locally and overseas, can help reduce risk. In conclusion, disruptions to supply chains are often unforeseen, unpredictable, and out of the business's control. Products like baby formula are one of many that are negatively impacted from the pandemic on meeting customer demand. However, there are ways to mitigate and prevent disruption by increasing capacity, offloading the bottleneck, and diversifying your supply base to effectively counteract disruptions caused by COVID-19. Thank you.